Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is Matthew. Thank you very much for joining. This is part 2 in our series on United States Social Security. I'm going to try to be clear-eyed about this. I'm not trying to be Chicken Little or saying that it's all bad, but economically you should understand where your tax money is going. And again, the two questions we're trying to answer here is, one, what does it mean when people say Social Security is bankrupt? Two, if there is any money there, where is it? Okay, so ended last video here. We have the green shaded area is each year money coming in from the young. The red shaded area is money going out to the old. And you see that as the baby boomers retire, this red area is increasing more and more. And the purple bars are the difference. Okay, so we're running a deficit now of $150 billion roughly in Social Security. These were flows. Everything I talked about in the last video, these were flows. Now we're going to talk about the stock of prior Social Security surpluses, or the balance sheet, to use an accounting term. So let's take off the taxes and the benefits. Just look at the net, the surplus or the deficit. Okay, if it's above zero, it's a surplus. Below, as we see, last 15 years, a deficit. Let's ask ourselves, as we ended last video, is Social Security actually bankrupt at this point? Okay, so it has a deficit here of $160 billion in 2012, another deficit, $160 billion in 2011, $185 billion in 2012, then down 86, 2013, so on and so forth, $150 billion as of last year. Does this mean that Social Security is bankrupt? Well, the proponents would say, hold on, not so fast. Definitely not. You're not looking at the trust fund. What is the trust fund? That is all the accumulation of surpluses that generally occurred. Generally, you see, we were positive, not always, but generally, from the beginning of Social Security until now. You need to factor that in to see if we're actually bankrupt. And the trust fund, I'm going to show as a black line here. So flows, the flows are the columns, the smaller columns here to the tune of 150 billion or so. The trust fund is the balance, the stock. And here, 2.8 trillion. You can see that it's actually down from COVID. The 2020 peak was 2.9 trillion in the Social Security Trust Fund. Now it's down about 100 billion. This is what they call the savings of Social Security. This can pay for all the shortfalls moving forward. Now, I should note that it's already projected that this will run out within 10 years. By 2034, this will be negative itself. Let's leave that aside for now. I want to actually ask the question if there is actually any money in the trust fund. And you can imagine by my rhetoric, the answer is no. Hope you're finding these videos creative and to the point when it comes to navigating the rough waters of the financial system. And I'm happy to share with you a platform that can do the same when it comes to getting a loan secured by your Bitcoin, and that is Debify. Debify is a non-custodial, Bitcoin-backed lending platform designed for people who want to borrow against their Bitcoin while maintaining full control. Debify offers institutional-grade liquidity through independent lenders, allowing for high-volume loans of up to 5 years. All transactions are secured by a unique multi-sig escrow system, ensuring that Bitcoin collateral remains safe and transparent. This setup guarantees that your Bitcoin is not rehypothecated, and you keep full visibility and control throughout the loan process. It's perfect for those who value security and transparency while exploring global stablecoin and fiat lending backed by Bitcoin. So head on over to debify.com today to get started. But let's talk about what this trust fund is actually. Okay, so first of all, let's look here. We can see that there's bigger cash flows, bigger surpluses in the 90s and the 80s, and also the trust fund ramps up. This is a key giveaway that the curve is compounding. And there's something here that's making the curve grow fast. Okay, let's just show you exactly what I mean. 1989, we have the trust fund assets at 163 billion. See that? 1990, let's take off the circles. You see exactly what I'm looking at. Trust fund assets, 163 billion. The pot of goodness of Social Security. 1989, 163 billion. 1990, 225 billion. That's a difference of 60 billion or so. Okay. Now let's look at the surpluses for those years in 1990. So between 1989 and 1990, we had a $47 billion surplus. But the difference in the trust fund, the black line, is $60 billion. So what's going on there? Well, this is the power of compounding, the power of interest. Social Security is collecting some interest on all those prior surpluses that it has. This is actually the opposite picture of what the government usually has with national debt. With national debt, always the government is accumulating deficits. Deficits simply stack up to the debt, but then they compound by interest. Okay, so it's the complete opposite picture here for Social Security than the national debt. Amazing. We should think that this is an amazing scheme, an amazing government program. And in some ways, it is. I'm not denying that it doesn't help people, okay? I'm not denying it doesn't help to pay for the old from the young in certain circumstances. But what you see here, the sharp increase, that is interest. That is compounded interest. That gets us from, a couple $100 billion here in trust fund assets in the 80s, end of the 80s, to 2.8 trillion today. I'll show it in the next video, but the cumulative surplus alone is not nearly this much. I just want to make the point, okay? So the rapid rise is interest. But let's now talk about the surpluses themselves, okay? So let's take off the trust fund again. Let's go back. Let's look at the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, a little bit of the 70s. Things start to go kind of negative in the 70s, but generally you see the first few decades here of Social Security, all good. Only a couple negative years, okay? Here's what I want to pose to you, dear viewer, dear listener. Let's look at the World War II times, okay? The mid-40s. Social Security is running $1 billion surplus. It's taking in money from its tax contributions from the young and pays out the old with $1 billion to spare in 1945 dollars. So that's quite a program, in fact, right? Social Security is running quite well here. Question: what happened to this $1 billion in surplus in 1944? 1.1 billion. Where did it go? Taking a moment to remind you that this show is brought to you by Trezor, home of the original Bitcoin hardware wallet. For over 10 years now, Trezor means business in Bitcoin security and functionality. When using their wallet software Trezor Suite to connect to the Bitcoin network, you're automatically connected via Tor, protecting your identity and giving you full control of your coins in a fully open source manner, both on the software level and on the hardware level. So head on over to Trezor.io to grab your brand new Trezor Safe 5 with a secure element, as well as a ton of available accessories to back up your keys and keep your coins safe. The answer, the brass tacks, the undeniable economic fact of that 1.1 billion is it was spent by another branch of government. That's what happened. There was no savings fund or pension fund that money was invested into in the name of Social Security. It was spent. Simply another branch of government took it and spent it. Probably the military, though I don't know that for sure. The numbers are kind of murky here, of course, back in the day, but we do have the net numbers. Another branch of government spent it. Could be the military, could be the FDA, could be the Transportation Authority. Another branch of government spent it on programs. All governments do is tax and spend. They don't work like companies. They don't have assets as such. In fact, if you look at the balance sheet of the government, you will only see debt. You see a little bit of gold, a little bit of land on the asset side, but there's a huge negative equity position of the government. It only collects debt when it can't fund its budget deficits, as we talked about earlier. So the answer is all of these positive surplus cash flow lines where Social Security was in the green, other sectors of government continue to be in the red, as they usually do. So all the government does is it just takes that money and spends it. I will show you in the future something that is called the TGA, or the Treasury General Account of the government. And generally, except for the COVID times, because there was a lot of stimulus there, generally that account is close to zero. It's the checking account of the Treasury. It's held at the Federal Reserve, the bank of the government. It's mostly zero. There is no savings, okay? Government collects money in tax every year. It doesn't matter if it's the name of Social Security or income tax, payroll tax, excise taxes, whatever. They collect money in taxes. They pay it out in their programs. Doesn't matter the program, military, Social Security, whatever, they pay it out. But in the rare case where there are programs with surpluses, That's what we need to analyze here, and that's what I'm saying. In the rare case where a government has a surplus in one of its agencies, in one of its programs, here the Social Security Agency, they just give the money to another branch of government. And immediately, that branch of government spends that money. The balance of the government bank account is always close to zero. There is no savings account there. There's no investing in ETFs or stocks or bonds or something else. It's always close to zero. And I will continue to push this point through the rest of this series. This money has been spent, right? That's the point of what I'm trying to be very, very clear. In 1944, 1945, these billion-dollar surpluses in the name of Social Security were spent in the name of another branch of government. Military, EPA, FDA, Transportation Authority. I'm not even sure if the EPA was around then. I think it was one of the programs that FDR helped to start. In any event, that's how it works. That's how it works in government. They will just spend whatever cash is there. It doesn't matter what branch of government. Okay, but they still account for it. So back to the trust fund, Social Security plus their interest will give you this figure, and this is right from the government. They will say, okay, don't worry, we have this trust fund. And this is what is going to be here for a rainy day. Now, again, ignoring the fact that even according to the government's numbers, this trust fund is going to be negative in 10 years, let's start to actually analyze what is happening here post-2008. If I already told you that the money has been spent pre-2008, where does the government get the money to pay for these last cash flow 15 negative years of even 180 billion in 2012 or 150 billion last year, to the tune of $150 billion a year? Where is the government getting the money to pay for this? I'm going to give you two answers, the official and the real. The official answer is it's getting it from the trust fund. And this would be booked as actually interest income. Okay, so they're collecting on this trust fund. There is some interest actually. You don't even need to collect the principal at the moment, just interest income of the trust fund. And they are paying for these deficits with interest. Okay, that's the book actuarial accounting method of where the money comes from. It comes from interest income from the trust fund. But again, let's repeat what I just said. Anytime in the past 80 years of Social Security, or 70 plus years of the surplus, right? Up until 2008, anytime there was a surplus, this money was immediately spent by another branch of government. So let's just use the example of the military. Let's say that Social Security is owed some amount from the military. It will draw on that, and it will include interest. There's an interest calculation, as I said. It will draw on that figure to close this gap, to close this regular operating deficit of Social Security, which has occurred since 2008. So that's where the proponents of Social Security, at least of its economics, saying that it's not really bankrupt, that's what they say. We have assets to cover that. But here's the catch. Where did the military get the money to pay back Social Security? Does the military have a bank account with savings? Does the military have some ETFs sitting in a stock brokerage account? No, they do not. They do not. There might be some CIA cash in a safe house somewhere, but that's about it. There is no, and I know the CIA is not part of the military, there is no cash there. The TGA, the Treasury General Account, is usually kept to zero. Governments take in money, they spend money immediately. It's always a current operation. So, in net effect, economically, accounting-wise, what is actually happening? Social Security is running negative to the tune of $150 billion a year. It has been for the last 15 years. That money comes from other branches of government who get that money from taxpayers. So all of this negative money in a trust fund, all of these deficits, anytime there is a deficit in a trust fund, it means that that program is spending taxes twice. It is money that is taxed twice in the name of that program. Back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, the government, the Social Security Administration was running a surplus. Great. But even here, by 1959, this negative $1.3 billion a year, where did it come from? It came from another branch of government paying Social Security back. Where did that other branch of government get the money? From tax revenue during 1959. Nowhere else. There was no savings there. There was no interest earned from some investment. There was no gold. It came from their earmarked allocation of taxes, say the military again, in 1959. So even here, the first year, 1959, of a deficit, this was Social Security money that was taxed twice. There was $1.36 billion that was taxed twice. Because it was already taxed here, and actually much more was taxed here. That's all gone. Now they need to do another set of taxes. Another set of taxes to pay for this deficit. This is how trust funds work in the government. There are no assets there. They're not getting paid a dividends. There's no bank account with savings. It's just new taxes every time. Okay? So let's again look at these last 15 years of cash flow negative for the program. That is, true deficits of the program. This 150 billion, okay, it's just comes from another branch of the government. Could be the military, could be the EPA, could be the FDA, could be any branch of government. That branch of government, of course, is going to probably run a deficit. So who plugs that deficit? The United States Treasury national debt, new bonds, new Treasury securities. There is no cash in the trust fund. There's no cash there. There is an accounting fiction of an asset, but that asset is due to Social Security from another branch of government, say the military, say the EPA, say the FDA, that is getting their own revenue from the same bucket of taxes in the same calendar year. So when you look at all of that in totality, anytime there's a negative for any branch of government, be it a trust fund or not, this will increase the national debt. This will increase the national debt, and specifically in a trust fund program like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, where apparently they had an asset, it's just a double taxation. It's another taxation. All of these 150 billion cash flow negative years, deficit years for Social Security is new taxation, double taxation. This is the key net economic effect of a trust fund. This money, and I'll put it in this positive line here, this money really isn't there. There's no trust fund there. There is an accounting representation of an asset from another branch of government, but as I've said now probably too many times in this video, that other branch of government, be it the military or whomever, just gets their revenue from taxes that year. It's always cash in, cash out. Taxes in, spending out. Taxes in, spending out. There's no savings there. There's no savings account. That's the key point with the trust fund. So what you need to think about when you see brass tacks, the deficit flows, the negative flows of Social Security, where payroll taxes cannot cover benefits in a year and we are left with these net flows negative. First thing, these increase the national debt by this amount. Second thing, it is money in the name of Social Security that is being taxed twice. It's being taxed twice. That's it for this video. Let me know, please, what you think of this in the comments. We are going to continue this very politically charged issue of Social Security, the flows, the stocks, the interest income, and perhaps if it compares to another country's pension fund in the next